get used to this.
I know, isn't it cool?
Check-ins.
I love it.
How are
Yeah,
you?
we don't have to record every single one,
Sure.
Hello and welcome to Change for the Better, the Power of Arts in Education. I am your host, Stacey Tirro, and this is episode 3 of my new series, Ask Tirro. So we're on a roll with Ask Tirro. We started out with episode 1, Natalie Alcime, and episode 2, Hearns Laguerre Jr. You can check that out on the YouTube page. And they asked me all sorts of questions about my career, my path from the beginning, my artistic process, how my first act has influenced my second act. And it's actually a lot of fun to turn things around and to really think about all these things. When you have a full-time career that you love and you're raising a family full-time all at the same time, you don't often get much of a chance to like wax philosophical about your life. You just put on your big girl pants and you do your best and you make things up as you go. And my episode 46 guest, Nausheen Rokerya, is no different. She is a full-time attorney for VNS Health and raising a beautiful family of her own. She understands the challenges and the glory of wearing all of the hats. We wear a lot of hats. And I am excited to sit with her once again. Only this time, she has some questions for me. So welcome, Nausheen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So nice to be back.
Yay. And so I'm just going to turn it over to you because this time you've got all the questions.
I do. I have a list. And I'm sure that I'm going to veer off of the list so we can go wherever this takes us. You talked about your artistic process and your path. And I think that I think the world of you, and I think that you have done so much for the community at Spring Valley and, Spring Valley High School. And so a lot of my questions were formulated with that setting in mind. So one of the questions I had, because if you know Spring Valley, you know the one thing that is so beautiful about it is that it is incredibly diverse.
Mhm.
And that's not the case for all schools. And I think it's been really valuable to me to have that experience. So my first question for you is, how has the diversity at Spring Valley High School impacted you personally?
Mm. In amazing ways. So, just the little bit of background. I was basically raised in North New City. So, I went to Clarkstown North High School, where there was scant few. I mean, if there was 2% people of color or not, white and Jewish or white and Catholic, that was a lot. I think now it's probably very different. I think the nature of the demographics in Rockland County, I think, has changed pretty significantly, which I think is great. But walking into Spring Valley High School for the first time back in 1996 was like opening this new door for me as far as the people who I was looking at, not looking like me. There were more white kids in Spring Valley High School at that time, but largely speaking, it was, I would say, 50-50. People, kids of color and kids who are white. So when I walked in, and I went to Montclair, which also was fairly diverse at the time, and multiculturalism, like this term, globalism, multiculturalism, like was really a buzz in the early 90s. So I was kind of starting to open my eyes to multi-ethnicities at the time, but it didn't really hit home until I had to start, like, making casting decisions for shows that in my mind at the time were sort of solidly race-based, and that was, again, based on my upbringing, to do what then they called blind casting, which I think is kind of a dumb term because 'cause you're never really truly blind when you're casting, you see what you see.
Mhm.
But to give deference to kids for roles who I, as a white woman with a white upbringing, might not have originally thought of, but that was my casting pool. And so I think the beauty of my working there and, exposure for all of these years has really, in a practical sense, changed how I apply the rules of casting.
Mhm.
And I have to kind of get down to not what they look like necessarily, but like who they are and the character-based features that they present, and can this person represent this character based on who they are. Now, of course, race plays a big part as far as like cultural upbringing, and there are certain shows, I don't know, maybe like, although now I think that's changing too, like Fiddler on the Roof,
Mhm.
right? Who you wouldn't normally think of putting African American kids in as Tevye or any of the characters, because historically speaking, that's not who they were. But I think I was more prepared for what is now seeming to be a turn around in, casting in general for shows and opportunities that kids, of color would not normally have had. And I think that it wasn't a shock to me as it started happening, over the years leading up to now. The kids who I have taught over the years, I have become so endeared to, both for who they are and for the different things that they bring to my consciousness that I never, ever would have experienced just in my own, family experience. And so the food, the practices, knowing that Ramadan lasts a month long and that I have to like look out for those kids, when Ramadan starts, because I know that they're hungry and they're about to pass out, I think it's definitely made me a more perceptive and a better teacher over the years for that gift.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I think you have opened the world of theater and provided access to that world to entire communities of people that hadn't necessarily had it, or hadn't even thought about wanting it
Yeah.
before. And I remember going to the Helen Hayes Awards, and we were definitely one of the more diverse crews to roll up there. And I think you have made so much more of an impact than you're giving yourself credit for. But um, I it's really interesting to hear from a casting from the role of someone whose job is to cast roles. That's really, really interesting to hear.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so we're gonna go all over the place here. So you've been teaching for many decades now, and uh, naturally, then that means you are many decades older now than when you first started. That's my lawyerly non-ageist disclaimer here, in case anyone was wondering. But the question is, in your opinion,
Mm.
is age just truly a number? Is it something more? Um, Reflect on this concept of age.
Mm. Mm. I've been reflecting a lot on this concept.
Yeah.
I think that, with age, there's just like anything else, there's pros and cons, right? You experience physical body changes, some, like mental cognitive changes that are sometimes frustrating, that are difficult. Your body doesn't, and especially for me, who's in like, movement arts all the time, I don't have the same bounce back per se. I start to feel things in my body and they last a lot longer and it's not really pleasant. But on the same token, the sort of the life experience makes you smarter. So it's like that, I work smarter, not harder. So I think there's a great benefit to age. And I think that we, as the aging, instead of lamenting our age all the time, saying, "Oh, I'm so old," all that, I think we need to work to make ourselves physically stronger because emotionally and mentally, we're pretty strong. Like,
Mhm,
life has done that to us and for us, but our bodies, that's a different thing. So we kinda have to work harder in the physical realm to make sure that we try and keep up with and balance out the natural decline that aging just has. Like, we can't
mhm,
help that. We can help it by doing things, so we have to focus more on our health and
mhm.
our self-care, to make sure that it doesn't like, things don't creep up on us. I think I'm a better teacher, better mother because I had to figure so many things out when I was younger and more energetic, but I spent a lot of my energy figuring things out. So now I think there's a little more downtime that I can enjoy because I don't have to overplan and I don't have to over anxiety things. I can just go, it's going to be what it's going to be, and I'm okay with that. So I think you're okay with a lot more things. I feel like the scales sort of balance themselves out with age. I think there's a reason that you retire at a certain age. You know? There's you either you're getting tired of what you're doing, you need a change, it's like enough already. Maybe you're not keeping up with all of the it's in educational, like the ridiculous professional development kind of things that keep coming up that you see the cycles happening, year
Mhm.
after year, decade after decade. But as far as my place in the classroom, I feel pretty comfortable because of all of my experience.
Yeah, I that's inspiring because I think you've described age as a process rather than a thing that accumulates, and you've described it in a way that actually makes it sound very desirable. Like, I can't wait to get to that point where I'm like, "Hmm, okay, it is what it is."
Yeah.
I'm getting there very slowly, but I don't I'd like to be where you are, and
Well,
so
remember, you also, you have younger children. So there's the worry about the younger children, what they're doing now and what they're going to become and what you're preparing them for and all that. Am I preparing them properly? So there's a lot of that that plays into how you process your life as a whole.
yeah,
Um, but now that my kids, both my kids are going to be in college in less than a month.
wild.
And so it's just a different place, and adjustments have to be made, but, like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and it sounds like it happens organically, like you said, life does prepare us to be emotionally and mentally resilient, and you're absolutely right. It's not like you're sitting there thinking, "All right, I'm gonna work out this emotional and mental muscle." As time goes on, life happens, and you find yourself at a certain point stronger, love it or hate it, than you were 10, 20 years ago. So, I need to trust that all of that is happening and that it will enable me to enjoy life in a completely different way in another 10, 15, 20 years.
It is, and you're gonna be fine.
Thank you. That I need to hear it. We're gonna do this once a week just so I can hear you say that.
You're gonna be fine, I promise.
Um, on that note, speaking of
Mhm.
the whole "you're going to be fine" concept, as a child or young adult, what did you think you were going to be doing? What were you worried about? And how does that compare to the reality of where you are now, who you are now, what you're happy about and not so happy about?
Is it wrong to say that I don't remember a lot of my childhood?
No, there's no wrong answer.
If I'm trying to think back as a child, like, I was kind of sheltered. I went to Hebrew school. I didn't do a lot of exploratory things until I got to high school. I was like, I did what my parents told me. I was a happy kid, basically. I was like normal kid, like whatever that means. And so it wasn't until high school that I pressed this accelerator all the way down to the floor and went, okay, what are we doing with all this? I really love this theater stuff. I really love this dance and music stuff. And so I think I can speak to this question based on my high school self, which was I wanted to be on Broadway. When I started to realize that I was, like, kind of getting good at certain things, I was like, "That's it. I wanna be a performer. I wanna be on Broadway. Let's go." And I was, like, all in. So between high school and then college, college prep, that's where I was. And so, what changed was when I got into the business, and I did it for about 3 years and did grinding in auditions, going at 5 AM, standing online, doing all of the required things that a non-union actor would have done, going to Broadway Dance Center, going to, HB Studios and taking acting lessons and taking voice lessons, just, like, being all in, and I saw what the business really was about, and it was not what I fell in love with in the school setting. And so the shift for me was actually kind of easy to, like, kind of leave that, "I wanna be a performer," over there and say, "You know what? Performing could be any time in your life." And then I was like, "When you retire, you wanna go do some community theater, you could do that." You'll be a different you, but that's okay. You can explore that then. The love for it, I think, never really dies. That's kind of always a part of you. How it manifests at any given part of your life, that's what changes, and that's okay because we're just changing beings all the time. We just kind of keep evolving, which is good.
Yeah, I something you just said really resonates with me, and it's you'll be a different you at that time. That's what I am trying to remind myself. And when I similarly, I think the memories that I have of my younger self are mostly high school memories, and so I am a completely different me. Flashback to our other time together, but
Mhm,
you do evolve, and I think knowing that you're likely to continue to evolve,
mhm.
and process things differently,
Yeah. I think who
and
you are,
accept.
fundamentally who you are, I think for most people remains
Yeah,
the
I
same.
think there's constants,
Yes.
but then your preferences, your understanding of what the reality is, like you said, what you thought the business was turned out to be very different from what you had envisioned. And so it's not, looking back, okay, yeah, you didn't end up on Broadway, but that's actually that turned out to be the better course for you because you found something that you love. Like I love that. So switching back to kind of your career and your time at Spring Valley High, what is one thing that you wish your students would or would not do? And I know it's kind of a broad question.
I wish they would trust themselves more. I wish they wouldn't doubt themselves.
Mhm.
Especially as I'm doing these podcasts and I'm talking to people 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later. The amount of doubt in the adolescent brain is so enormous, and it gets in their way, and I think that's why I spend so much time at work
Mhm.
saying, "Shut up and do it. Shut up and do it. Come on. No, no, don't, like, distraction, go." Because the doubt, the imposter syndrome, we've talked about that, is so, so powerful, and if you don't break it early, that will most certainly carry it forward in spades.
Mhm.
So, when a kid, like, walks into my classroom or the theater or whatever, and they're like, I'm like, "Come on, let's go." Because I want them to trust the place. I want them to trust me so that they can trust themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shut up and do it. I love it.
Shut up and do it. Like, I don't wanna hear it.
Yeah.
Quit. Go. Yeah.
Ugliest teaching moment.
Wow. Ugliest teaching moment. I'm sure I've had them. I know I've had them. I probably blocked it. Oh, I gotta think about this for a second. It's not a particular moment, but it's like that more of an ugly feeling.
Mm.
I mean, talking about me coming into Spring Valley being, what I look like and who I am and what my background is, and the occasional assumption that, "What do you mean you don't have a pencil? What do you mean what do you mean you don't XYZ?"
Mhm.
And the ugliness for me in that is the moment where I forget where some of these kids are coming from. And that, we don't know all of their story, every aspect of their story, and we should never, ever assume that they have or don't have something. And I've had to work really hard because and I think teachers in general, it's like, of course you should be bringing a
Yeah,
pen
you're
to your
seeing the
regents
story.
exam,
Right.
and how do you not know this, and it's making assumptions that you should never be making.
Mhm.
And it still happens. It still happens, and I have to go, "Stop it. Cut it out.
Mhm.
Go somewhere else." Yeah.
Similar question, but a little bit different before we transition back into rosy stuff.
Mm.
Least favorite part of your job?
Faculty meetings.
Is there, I mean, what could you, if you could change something about them to make them more productive?
I wish they weren't so, like, generalized, that
Mhm.
they were a little more tailored to, yeah, each department has their own, needs and their own, ways of doing things. And
Mhm.
so faculty meetings, everybody's sort of coming together and then they brush things with broad strokes.
Mhm.
Because what else are they going to do? Like they have an hour to cover something,
Yeah.
whether it's statistics or SEL or, whatever. And so, we have to like dig into our brain and think, all right, how do I take this information and put it into my situation with my kids? And sometimes just like it really doesn't apply. Like
Mm.
it just
Mhm.
doesn't, it's like square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't fit. So, I guess if there were more, funding, more money for better, more specific departmental things. Oh, and then that would be better. And then along those lines, it's so hard to year after year be in a school that is so far behind in
Mm.
its resources. Where
So
like,
that's a perfect segue because my next question, feel free to answer it as continue, is
yeah.
we have been the subject of, austerity cuts and budget cuts and, failure to pass all sorts of initiatives that were designed to, if nothing more than just maintain continuity of existing resources. And that's been a struggle. And I have long since moved out of Rockland, but it still tugs at my heartstrings when I read the headlines about, the latest thing to be ripped away from, these children and these young people that frankly need them more than so many others. And so what my question was going to be, yes, I mean, I think the arts are in a separate bucket, but for whatever reason, they are not considered all the time to be a fundamental, a necessary.
Mhm.
And, I'm going through this now as a parent. We just went through a middle school search, and I'm realizing for the first time that they're add-ons, things like music and theater and even art,
Mhm.
they are not built in. And I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on the impact of not having, regular access to things like music, theater, and art from an early age? And what do we do? I mean, where can we, if it is really a budgetary crisis, are there ways to ensure that children are not missing out on whatever those opportunities are, whether it's catharsis, whether it's keeping kids out of trouble, whether it's giving them an opportunity to explore, like whatever it is, how
Mhm.
do we compensate for the fact that there might not be enough money for formal programming?
Yeah. I mean, that's of course a district to district, area, area to area question. I know that, to speak to, what are the effects. I want to say, okay, I'm very bad with years and time, but I'll say like, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, there were these massive cuts and they cut music and arts at the elementary level for several years. Eventually, it was, reinstated. But the fundamentals that are taught in early education weren't being taught in music. Well, certainly not in theater. There were no real theater programs in the elementary level, but in music and art, because those are like usually the sort of
Mhm.
things
The
that you
first thing to
see.
go. Yeah.
Right. Well, but that's what you see. Like you don't usually see dance. You don't
Yeah, at that
usually
age,
see
right.
theater, in the K through say 5 or 6 range. That usually comes in like in the middle school. But
Mhm.
when there's no formal education in that, when that's taken away, then all the fundamentals, when they're like sponges and they're like taking up and
And
getting the interest is not there, and they're not able to get it privately,
yeah,
like
right.
in our district, then the first time they're seeing any of that is in middle school. And in middle school, they're already starting to detach and not be disinterested, and they're more
Yeah.
interested in their friends and keeping up with their friends and all of that. So by the time they get to high school, they don't have even fundamental skills. And that hurt us. Like I saw that really come to roost probably in the, like, 2017, 18, 19. Well, no, probably 18, 19, and then the pandemic
But
hit.
by the time those kids who
We're up in the
didn't
high
have
school.
access, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, it affected us in terms of our pit orchestras,
Mm.
we were like, "Oh my god, we have to hire musicians in order to cover because we don't have the instruments in the student body to cover all the parts that we need." So more money has to go out to that, and it's like spreading a very limited budget that we have. So that's like one instance, and then, of course, the pandemic hit, and that hurt us even further, so we're now, like, trying to build the program back after what I'll call, I don't know, 7 or 8 years of being chipped away at, sort of culminating with pandemic, which has nothing to do with, budgets per se. You need in order to establish higher levels of talent, of ability, you have to start early. If you want them to be able to read, write, and speak well, you start when they're babies.
Wait
And
until
then
middle
it
school.
it builds like it's like a pyramid. That kind of speaks to the first part of the question. What's the answer? If I feel like if we as a society really knew that, we wouldn't be talking about it in this way. I think arts awareness, programs like the ones that we have need to survive to show the community and to show the young ones what kids are capable of doing with good programs. And so I think that's another reason why I've done it for so long and I didn't like give up,
Mhm.
when the pandemic like just kind of throw it all. I worked harder because I knew that there was going to be attrition and I knew that coming back it was going to be a real like uphill up the mountain kind of climb. And it is and it has been, but we're coming back. It's happening. And now there's music and art that's all, been back for many years now, but damage was done. And with the arts, it's like you see the people around you doing it and then you want to do it. So there's a social component
There
to
is, I
it,
think.
so if the program is small, then building it is really tough because there's not enough
Mhm.
pull. A lot of over the years, a lot of kids would join thespians because it was such a vibrant, big, active program. Now it's like, more fringe and then they come in and maybe they'll pull, another friend in. It's just a slower growing process than I think it used to be. Yeah, but I think awareness, I think we just need people to be aware of just how important the arts are to kids as people, as human beings, and that it's bigger than just like, "Let's do a show." Like, order to let's do a show, all of these skills have to be, hundreds and hundreds of skills have to be in place.
I mean, I agree with all that. I also think, at least for me personally, that, for anyone who thinks that things like music and art are a potential distraction from, academics, which some people think of, school as being as primarily serving. I don't subscribe to that, but for those who do, I swear by this. I think that my access to so many extracurriculars, including all of the stuff that we did together in theater, including the musical stuff I did, the dance, actually really improved my academic profile. I don't know if it just gave me that balance of helping relieve some of the stress that came with always, studying. And it gave me a release. It gave me, confidence. It gave me so much more. And I've noticed this trend throughout my life, particularly in college, where I got there and I told myself, first semester, I don't want to get distracted. I'm not going to try out for any of these things. I'm really just going to focus on the academics. And I bombed.
Mhm.
And then after a couple of semesters of bombing, I finally ripped the Band-Aid off, and I think I mentioned to you, I tried out for some dance teams. I just said, "Shut up and do it." And I
Mhm.
did it, and my GPA shot up, and it was like filling this need,
Mhm.
and had that need gone unfulfilled, I don't think I would have unlocked my fuller potential even on the academic side. So, for anyone who's doubting the the ability of the arts to round children out and enable them to be their best selves in all areas of life, I would love to chat. So
Yeah, I think it's even more, and I'm not a scientist, but I've been doing this a long time. I think it's more than just the self-care, balancing your academics with the things that you love. Yes, that's true, but I have seen time and time again where kids wake up. The arts wakes up a part of their brain
brain, yep, yeah.
that is maybe lying dormant, or it's quieter. It
Oh, yeah.
allows
Oh,
you
yeah.
to process things in a completely different way, where it shows you there are more possibilities. It's not
The
binary.
creativity that right.
Right. And you apply that to everything in your life. Like, yes, a standardized test, this is the right answer. Boom, done. But standardized test is not how life works.
I think you're right. I think there are experiments where, they'll have somebody answer questions, without listening to music and then while listening to music, and they show like different areas of the brain light up. So I feel like I can feel that happening. And that might very well also be a part of my having observed this trend repeatedly because I feel smarter when I'm doing all of these things.
'Cause you're figuring things out, you're problem solving. Here's a problem, let's figure out how to solve it. Boom, I feel smarter.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And
that's
it's
it.
very results oriented. Like,
Yes.
we're constantly working towards some bigger thing
Yeah,
that we're all working towards, and I need your thing, and I need your thing, and I need your thing, and I need your thing to
it's
make
all gonna
that
come
happen.
together, right?
So, there's a lot that the arts do that we need to be screaming about
Yeah.
because they're, like, required life skills
Mhm.
to be successful.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't want to keep you over. I can go on forever, but my last, I'll make this my last question, which is, you've been teaching again for many decades, and as much as I cannot wrap my head around the idea, at some point you're going to retire, and my question is, if you had to choose one word to describe the legacy that you want to have left behind, what would that one word be?
Mm. There's 2, and I'm having trouble deciding between them.
Oh, that's fine. 2
Okay.
are fine. Take your pick.
So, 1, possibility. There's always possibility for anything that you wanna do. And then the other one is love,
Mm,
because I don't think that you can spend your time, 30 years of your life taking care of other people's kids, basically, and being creative and trying to maintain a creative program without love. So, yeah, those 2.
I don't even know what to say. Even if we had more time, I wouldn't have a follow-up to that because that is spot on. That's what we think of when we think of you.
Oh, yay. Well, that's good then.
Yeah,
That's good.
that's a lot.
Ah, I love talking to you.
Same. And you've given me a lot to think about, actually.
Well, that's
So
good.
reflect.
That's
A lot of
good.
reflecting.
That's what we're hoping for, is just make people think in good ways. Not
Yeah. No, it's yeah. You are. I don't know what it's function of, but I don't have too many people in my life kind of at your where you are in your life. I don't have any big sisters or, anything like that. And so I look to you as a source of ongoing inspiration and direction and possibility.
Yeah.
And hearing, watching you go through life, right? I feel like I've watched you. I remember when you were pregnant with your first child, watching you, now getting ready to retire, having lost your mom, sending your kids off to college, like all these things that happen. So I feel like I'm watching it unfold live, and I am. And I'm taking notes because there's so much value, even in hearing you answer questions that I thought maybe I could have predicted some of the answers, but you've given me a lot more to think about. So
Well, that's great, and I'm here for you. I really am.
yeah, thank
Like, seriously, reach out.
I will. I will.
Do it, 'cause,
Yeah,
what else am I gonna do? I got time on my my hands, you know? My kids are gonna be gone, so
it's just so wild.
yeah,
But
it really is this whole and, I'm not retiring yet, you
no,
know,
no.
still have a
Mm,
couple years to go.
yeah, it's very, very hard to even envision Spring Valley High without you.
Mm.
I cannot imagine how they would even approach replacing you, but,
Well, I'm looking. I'm looking for people. Don't let it die. Yeah.
gotta bring back one of your former students or something, like, it's
Well, the nice thing actually is that, I finally decided to give up not give up, but to pass on the choreography for the spring musical, and that is going to be a former thespian this year. So we're trying that out, just trying to, like, start
yeah,
spreading
yeah,
out the feelers and, like, who can we
yeah.
pull in so that when it is time for me to go, it's in good hands. So, thank you, Nausheen.
Thank you for letting me do this. This was really fun.
Yeah, I love doing this stuff. I was like, "Okay, sit down for another, interview thing," but then it always turns out to be something really, really special. So, I'll just keep doing it, so yay.
Yes. Alright.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us for the 3rd installment of Ask Tiro, and tune in. Make sure you, look at the YouTube channel, at, Change for the Better, subscribe, click the little bell or button or y'all know how to do that. You can look at my blog that has the write-ups of everything for Change for the Better and a lot more at stacytiro.com to see what else is going on. So yay. Thank you. Yeah. Yay. We did it.